Recording in progress. So welcome back. First half, we kind of went through soft lighting. We did some image analysis. We talked about the lighting compass. Don't see video though. Can you see my screen? See the screen? Oh, okay, good. See the screen. Yeah, I don't have my talking head on just because, well, I'll turn it on for a little bit. Mostly because when I start rendering, doing the demos, it tends to take the resources off. Yep, nope, thanks for reminding me, Daniel. I'll turn it on for a little bit. Once I start rendering, I'll have to turn it off. Awesome. All right, so let's take a look at what the assignment requirements are. And all of this is on FSO. So we're still dealing with the principles of light or qualities, however you want to look at it. Light direction, light intensity, light color, shadow qualities, hard shadows, soft shadows. So we have two assignments for you today. The first one is a portrait, or actually the first one is a still life, and the second one is a portrait. So you do the still life first, kind of get your feet wet for doing multiple lights in a scene, and then you tackle the portrait, which is a little more challenging. All right, so a couple of really important notes when you get started. Okay, the portrait already has the appropriate standard surface on it, the AI standard surface material. Do not change the materials or the scene will not render properly. Okay, for the still life, that's either the rabbit or the actual still life, you will need to assign an AI standard surface to all the objects there. Again, turn off specular weight, make the base color 50% gray or 0.5 value. Make sure cast shadows is turned on. In your lights, they should be by default, but it's always good to check. Make sure that all your lights use Arnold attributes. So the only light not used today is the directional light. Why? Because that's the sun and we're not doing anything with the sun. You know, you will get a chance, depending on the scene you use, to use the point light, the spotlight, but for the most part, it's going to be a combination of the AI area light, the Arnold area light, or spotlight, all with Arnold attributes. All right, so you're going to get a choice. You're going to do either the Cornell rabbit or the still life. Standard, you know, fruit bowl, cup, candle kind of deal. Now, the Cornell rabbit, named for Cornell University, it was one of the first 3D point cloud scans. And Cornell University has been at the forefront of computer graphics since the 1970s. So they've got a lot of firsts out there, and they have this model up online for free, obviously. You know, it's old enough. It's really public domain by now, pretty much. Everybody loves to use it because it is sort of an organic shape, and it's got pretty decent detail. Now, if you're not familiar with what a point cloud scan is, it's basically a scanner that goes around the subject 360 degrees. And as it goes around, it shoots out rays or light, infrared usually, shoots it out, tracks where in 3D space that light hits a surface as it bounces back and records it. And each one of those little points a dot is created. Then all those dots are triangulated. So you guys know what triangulation is, right? You got a bunch of teeny tiny little dots all over the place to define a shape. And then eventually, all these dots need to be turned into triangles. And in a case where you might have a an n-gon somewhere, it's triangulated even further until it is only triangulated. So consequently, the mesh can be quite dense. That's really not a problem with modern computers, but in the day, if you remember us talking about, them doing Toy Story, that was a big deal. Anytime you had a lot of polygons or a lot of texture on your screen, that all took power from your computer. So anyway, you've got a choice of the Cornell Rabbit, which uses 3-point lighting. It's got a key, a fill, and a rim. All right, still life over here. This actually uses 4 lights. It's got the key, it's got the fill, it's got a backlight back here, and it's got a secondary backlight behind the candle. So your choice, whatever one you want to do. I am going to demo the Cornell Rabbit because the Cornell Rabbit needs light linking, which is kind of a unique situation. When we get to it, I will show you, the need for light linking and how we do it. I'm just not going to show you, oh, this is where you go to light link. It's not going to make any sense. So down here, follow the project outline. Right? Set your Maya project folder to the one we give you. Open the appropriate scene. Work on one light at a time. You start with the key light. The key light's going to be an Arnold AI area light. The fill light's going to be an Arnold AI area light. Create the rim or the center backlight. The rim for the rabbit, center backlight for this. That will be a spotlight with Arnold attributes. Okay, for the still life, you'll need an additional backlight. So I used a point light for that, just to give you a little bit of practice if you decide to do this scene using a point light with the Arnold attributes. So you're going to worry about like direction, intensity, color. And again, whenever you see contrast and hardness, this is shadow quality for us in CG. Soft versus hard. Soft being big light, hard light being small light, just so you can, just try to reinforce this as much as possible. All right, so portrait, it already has the subsurface scattering material in it. So you guys will select one of the portraits. Now, in the template, there are no reference images in there. So you will have to download the portrait guide, go into Photoshop, kind of crop out the image you want to use. And then that goes in your reference slot, and don't stretch the reference. And then your render goes in the right side. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what you get All right, looks like video finished processing. Yes, there we go. Part 1 is done. Awesomeness. All right, so let's take a look at the reference images you guys get for the still life and the rabbit. The reason I want to go over that is because we give you what are called lighting breakdowns. Lighting breakdowns are basically what each light does by itself. And then at the end, we combine all lights together. Now, the workflow for this project is going to be a little bit different, possibly for you, than project 2. Since we are dealing with multiple lights, we will light in passes. Now, if that phrase is kind of foreign and unfamiliar to you, it's a little bit like what they do in animation, right? You get your poses and you work on getting your in-betweens between each pose. So what we like to do is we're going to do kind of our poses in lighting, get the light to about 80% of the way there. Once we get it 80%, we stop. We go on to the next light. Get that to about 80, 85%. Stop. Go on to the next light, 80, 85%. If there's a fourth light, you do the same thing. Then you go back. Now, each light you work on, you're going to work on one light at a time. So as you finish one light, you'll put it on a display layer, turn that display layer off, create your new light, work on that, put that one on a display layer. So you go through them all, and then you wind up turning them all off, go back to the key light. Work on the key light first. So get your key 80, 85% done. Get your fill light 80, 85%. Get your rim, get your back. $80, 85%. All right, continue on. Then you go back. Okay, then you go back to the key, and maybe you get that 85, 90%. Or if you got it to 85, or you might go 95. It depends on what you can do in a reasonable amount of time. And so on. This way you don't get fatigue and you don't get obsessed with pixel perfect for each light. Right? The whole idea is you keep moving forward. This gives you a steady progression rather than obsessing over one light and getting every single shadow pixel perfectly. That basically will drive you insane. We are artists. Who does not obsess about perfection, right? Artists are the worst. So to kind of help with that, just trust the process. 80, 85%. Go back, do it again, tweak it a little bit more, get it a little closer. Go on to the next light, tweak it a little bit closer, and so on. Just keep doing it. After 2 or 3 times, you turn all your lights on and you look at the final result and compare it with the final reference. You'll find you are a lot closer than you think you are. And again, once you turn all the lights on, you're going to see some imperfections. So you take notes and you go, all right, turn the lights off, going back to the key. Or it's that rim light. It's not quite bright enough, or it's not quite in the right spot. Okay, take notes. Be as objective as you can about your own work. Hard, I know, believe me. I live it every day. So let's take a look at the reference here. So Photoshop templates for this, the rabbit is showing, but if you open up the template, The still life is a separate display layer. So layer down here, just turn off the rabbit. There is your still life. Okay, you got a little more to keep track of down here. So you got scale for your lights, and scale for the area light means what did you scale it up to? The default is 1. Did you go to 2? Did you go to 1.5? What did you do? All right, and then again, we're dealing with what were your camera AA samples? What was the diffuse samples, right? And what was your render time? Now for the spotlight, it's going to be scale. That's going to be your radius, intensity. What was your cone angle? What was your penumbra? Was there any drop off? Fill out all this stuff. It's important to try to understand what you've done to get the quality you've got. All right, let's not save that. Let's go take a look at the reference. So 2 folders, Cornell Rabbit. Now, just like the portrait guide, I'm going to give you what I like to call some positional guides. Right? This is really light position. This will give you an idea of where the lights are in relationship to the subject. So here's kind of a front view of the viewport. This is meant to show elevation. So this should help you get an idea how high up the light is relative to the subject. So we're giving you a couple of little, aids in the beginning. So you get an idea. All right, so my key light, make notes for yourself. There's my fill. There's my rim light. Rim light looks pretty level. Key light's up a little bit. That little center pointer is pointing in. Looks like it's going right into the center of the body. Looks like the fill light's up a little higher. It's not quite as big. You make any of those notes for yourself. All right, the second one is an overhead. That'll give you an idea positionally. Oh, okay. So 0 degree for the camera, 90 degrees is here. So this is a little more than 45 degrees. It's probably 50, 55, 60 degrees. Actually, maybe even 70 off to the side. Here's the fill light. And then here is the rim light. You can all see they're sort of pointing more or less to the center of the subject, more or less. So that'll give you an idea where to position them. This is not meant for you to bring in and put it in as an image plane and try and ape the exact size and everything. No, just to give you an aid. So here are the different lights and what they do. And remember, lighting is additive, which means each light contributes to the final, but they all look a little off by themselves. So here is our key light, right? You can see definitely need fill. We definitely need a rim because our subject just bleeds right in to the shadow in the backdrop. But this will give you an idea of what your render should look like. You get it to about 80, 85%. Take note of the tail shadow. Take note that the shadow for the body is not perfectly parallel. It's up a little bit. It doesn't extend, really super far beyond the frame. And here is the fill. Now, the fill might be really hard to see. So hopefully you guys have downloaded Project 3 for yourselves, and you can kind of look at this reference on your own. But there is some light. Remember, these lights look this way because they are not meant to be used individually. They are meant to be part of the whole. So while this looks super weak, remember this is getting added to the key light. And then we have the rim light. The rim light is designed to separate the subject from the backdrop. And you can see that back leg that was missing. in the key is here. And that's how we define the edge of the subject. So we try and figure out, all right, what are we doing here? You know, I'm taking note of, okay, so it's not like it quite gets the very top of the ear, but it does come down, gets the base, doesn't get too much of the under part of the rabbit's chest. Mostly the sides I'm noting. I got some light on the back, on the tail, and on that back leg. So each one of these lights individually looks odd. And then at the end, this is what all the lights look like together. This is actually your final reference that's inside the template. All right, does that make sense? Anybody have any questions? Brianna's good. Thank you, Brianna. Kentavious is good. Daniel's good. Thank you. Marie's good. Nathaniel, any questions? Darian, any questions? Joni? All right. So let's take a look at the still life. Still life, same workflow. You've got a key light. You've got a fill light, again, you know, kind of really soft and weak. Not meant to draw attention to itself, just there to support the key light. We've got a backlight. We've got a backlight behind the candle here. And really that's there to help separate subject from backdrop. And then all lights together. So you notice that, you know, in this key light, that candle bleeds into the background. So that's why we use that right backlight here, just to kind of help separate it a little, not to the point of being a rim, but just to the point of being able to separate that candle from the backdrop so we get depth. So pretty simple to see where the key light's coming from. Take note of the shadows of the fruit, the shadows of the bowl, the shadows of the cup. Now, just like the rabbit, I have some positional reference guides for you. This is sort of a front shot. Get an idea of the elevation of the lights and relative size compared to the subject. We kind of have an overhead shot, show you where the camera is, where the lights are, how they're working. All right, so for the portrait, let's take a look at the portrait. You don't get a reference folder. What? No reference? All right, no reference. That's because you're going to go to the references section inside lesson 3.1 and download the free portrait guide yourself. And you will take that template, this portrait guide, into Photoshop and pick your image, crop it. That will be your reference you will put in. So here's what the template looks like. We kind of make it a little smaller here. There we go. All right, so reference, lighting diagram, go over here. Need both. Don't stretch the image. Your render is a portrait or a tall aspect ratio. It's already been set up for you. You're going to record all the information down here you need, the render time, and you're set to go. Like I said, you will get a scene file that is subsurface scattering Arnold material. We also have a texture map for you. This was given to us with the scan. Anybody who is a character modeler and you want to lay out UVs, this is your world in the future. Unwrapping a head and making sure that all of the parts of the head fit onto the CG body. Now, if you're working with scans, a lot of times that is pinned in there and you might actually get UVs out of it if you're lucky. Don't count on it though. Depends on who you're working for and of course the quality of the equipment and the operator too. So that's the color map. That's already included. It's already attached. That's why it's absolutely crucial you set your project to this folder before you open the scene. If you forget to do that, that skin texture will be missing and you will be dealing with a dead, ghosty corpse. The material will not look right. All right, so we talked about that. We talked about that. So it's a 50-50 split between the two. 50% is the project weight for the still life part, 50% for the portrait part. Anybody have any questions before we start demo? And this is where I'm going to turn off my talking head video here because I'm going to fire up Maya. So we can start work. Got to wait for everybody to load. That includes RenderMan and Arnold both. And come on, I believe in you. You can do it. RenderMan, Arnold. Yay. All right, here we go. A little more real estate there. Let's pull this down a little bit. Good. Okay. So again, make sure you have Maya 2020, obviously. To find out what version of Arnold you have, you go to the Arnold menu, go to About. And you want the latest version, which is 4.2.1.1. They call the core 6.0, but 6.2 is actually the latest. This is the this is the Maya to Arnold plugin. This is what's important in order to get the denoise imagers. So again, I mean, I'm just mentioning this because I had a lot of questions about it on Discord. All right, so let's set project. And I'm going to set my project and open up the rabbit only because the rabbit, I absolutely have to use light linking. And you know what? I want to show how that works. So there's my Maya project folder for the rabbit. There it is. Let's hit set. Go file open, and I want the Cornell rabbit. Now you will get an error message and I can't figure out why. I think it has to do with, like project one, there is some old V-Ray stuff in here because we're evaluating V-Ray also. If you get this, click OK, you should be fine. I'm doing this for all the people that kind of skim through the videos and miss parts. Well, they're not friendly letters, I guess, but I was going to say large friendly letters. All right, so just click OK. You should be good to go. The camera is locked. There is your mesh. Looks super dense. Now, most of the time, just like with Project 2, I like to work in perspective and render in the render cam. So there's my rabbit. There's my backdrop. Let's take a look at what we need to do here. All right, so here we are. All right, we need to assign the AI standard to it. So what I'm going to do, even before I assign the AI standard, whenever I open a scene up, I like to save as. Why? In case something happens. Remember, it's Maya. Maya hates humans, computers, love-hate relationship with them. So I'm going to go File, Save As. Let's rename this. This will be my work file. So 2021-04. All right, next, select all the surfaces. There's only two things in here. There's the render bunny and backdrop. So anybody remember what the shortcut key is to assign a new material? Yes, thank you, Clifton. Shift T. So hold Shift, hit T. Yeah, that brings up the assign new material window. Come on, let me resize you. Don't be difficult. Okay, Maya. Maya's difficult. Yes, we know. All right, so you know what? Forget you. Arnold, click on Arnold. I want to go down to AI standard surface right here. Bang. So next thing you want to do, turn off specular weight. Click on color, change the value to 0.5. Now we're 50% gray. If I go 6, looks kind of dark. Don't forget, what else do you want to check? Check to make sure color management is turned on. Color management, turn it on. Save, yes. Even in the viewport, it makes a difference. Now, the reason I mention this is because older versions of Maya, color management was not turned on. So I left color management off on this, or actually I turned it off just to kind of force everybody into checking it. You open it up, doesn't look right, check color management. Turn color management on. All right, so now everything we look at should look fine. If I open my Arnold, render view and I load my reference in and it looks good, that's fine. If I load it in, it looks terrible, check color management. Because your reference images will look off. They will not look like they do if you just look at them on your desktop. So color management, AI standard. Let's go up. What else do I want to check before I start working? One other thing it doesn't hurt to check, and that is make sure Arnold is your renderer. Look at that, Maya software. Ooh, Satan's own. There we go. Now we're happy. Got our happy little renderer. Let's save that. Okay, so beautiful. My Arnold render view still works, not like the other day on Wednesday. trying to demo it, and it was going, nope, I'm not starting up till you restart Maya. All right, so first thing we want to do, let me take a look at those positional guides. All right, so reference images, there's the rabbit. Let's take a look at those. All right, so my key light is coming from the right side. So this must be my key. And that is how big it is compared to the reference or compared to the subject. So that's good to know. And that's what it looks like overhead. Awesome. So first light I want to make, Arnold area light. So Arnold area light, there's your icon. Made my Arnold area light. Ah, that feels good. Where is it positioned in the world? Okay. It's got to swing around. I want to kind of aim it towards the back. It's kind of going in the middle there. So there is my Arnold area light. Let's rotate it around. Now, I don't like using all axes at once. I just like having one axis. There we go. So let me Z back here. Good. Bring it over here and let's swing it around. There we go. Let's see what that looks like. All right, looks like it needs to come around to the back a little more. So let's kind of do that. And let's see where we are. All right, it's got to come up out of the ground, obviously. So let's pull that up. So I got my camera over here like that. Yeah, pull it down a little. Good. All right, let's kind of pull this away a little bit. Looks like it needs to be rotated a little bit more. Rotate a little more. Let's aim it down a little bit. I'm just trying to get a rough idea of what this looks like. All right, that's a rough position right there. Let's save. Now, before I even hit the render button, let's load the reference in. Project 3, Arnold. There we go. There's my key light. Let's load that in. And let's hit the render button. All right, so rendered, but not from the render cam. Let's choose the render cam. There we go. All right, now I can see it's sort of the right position. It's too dark, but I can see I got a lot of light here like I do in my corner. And I kind of like actually having this little thumbnail right next to it because I'm just getting the big picture right now. So bright here. And my shadow for the tail, I mean, that's, you know, that's fairly close. Let's make it a little brighter. And remember, I only want to get about 80, 85%. So let's work on getting that intensity. So by default, intensity's really hilariously anemic. Let's crank that up. So you can see my shadow moves a little bit, which means it looks like my light is a little too far around to the front. Why? Because my shadow goes back in that direction. So what I want to kind of do is swing it around to the side just a little bit more. And you know what? The intensity is not too bad. I'm looking at the bright spot right here. Let me try moving the light a little bit. And let's try rotating that just a touch. So I'm looking, my shadow's not bad. I'm looking at the shadow. It is a little wider, which means that my subject might be a little close. Let's just back it off a little. No, I don't like that. Let's Z back. There we go. A little better. Let me try bumping up the intensity a little bit. So we're working with light direction as always, but in order for me to really see it, I do need a bit of intensity. So let's crank that up to 12, see what that looks like. All right. Actually, you know what? I would call that pretty close to being 85%. My tail shadow's not bad. I got light bright here. It more or less does its job on the rabbit a little bit. It is off, but I want to move on to the next light. All right, so far, any questions? Does this make sense? The workflow so far, even though we've only done one light. I don't want to obsess about this. So Brianna, Chanel, Clifton, Daniel, Darian, Joni, Kentavious, Marie, Nathaniel. Anybody have any questions? Clifton's good, thank you. Kentavious is good, Daniel's good, Marie is good, thank you. Brianna? Brianna's good. Okay, awesome. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my key light and let's rename this. Let's call that key. I'm also going to put that on a display layer. So channel box, layer editor, my light's selected. I'm going to click on this little icon, which will assign my selected light to the layer. And this is going to be my key. Hit save. And I'm going to turn off visibility. Why? Because I want to work on one light at a time. So now if I render this, nothing. Awesome. So let's work on getting the fill light, which is over here. All right, so my fill light. Okay, it's sort of, it's further away. Aims sort of at the rabbit's head. Elevation looks like it's up slightly higher. So let's create another AI area light. There it is. So this one, let's move it out here because it is further away. How far is it? Yeah, it looks like it's pretty good. I think it's about half, almost 2/3 between the rabbit and the edge. That's good enough for now. How far forward? Push it back just a touch. Let's rotate it so that it is aimed at the rabbit. Let's take a look at the front view. Oh yeah, well, guess what? Looks like this needs to be kind of elevated. So let's pull that up. How high up is it? Probably a little high there. Let's go down here. And I'm looking at this going, you know what? This looks like it's smaller than that light. I didn't really have to adjust. I might have to scale my key light a little bit because maybe my shadow's a little soft. I'll evaluate that later. But here I'm just going by size comparison, and this icon is smaller than that icon. So let's try scaling it. Let me go 50%. How does that look? It looks sort of okay. Let's rotate it down. Right into the head. There we go. All right. So again, rough position. That's really all I care about. So before I get too excited, let me get rid of this reference and load in the fill light. All right, super dark, but let's see what we get when I hit the render button. Ooh. Well, you're probably saying, I don't see anything. Well, yeah, because we're streaming, it's file compression. We're going into Zoom with not the greatest video quality. But if you're looking at the reference or you're looking at this video off of YouTube, you should be able to see a little bit of light here. Now, honestly, these are default settings, and I'm going, you know, the intensity is not bad. I'm looking at the shadow on the ear. I'm looking down here, and I'm going to say, you know what? I got lucky. I'm going to call it 80%. So all I did was just try and match up where the light position was based on my reference here. Okay, I figured out where it was in relationship to the camera overhead. And then I figured out how high up it was. And I kind of got an idea for the scale of it based on this in relationship to the subject and the fill light in relationship to the subject. So save. I got lucky. Going to count my blessings. And let's throw it on a layer, display layer. So this is our fill light. And I'm also going to rename it in the outliner. There's my light. I call it Fill My Friend. All right, so going to turn off the fill light. So now we've got a key light roughed in. We've got a fill light roughed in, equivalent to kind of doing your poses in animation, right? We're getting a light roughed in, so it's more or less in the right position. This keeps us moving forward all the time. So let's go and take a look at the rim light. All right, so rim light, it's like a spotlight. That's pretty good. We can do that. And let's see what it looks like overhead. All right, it looks like it's pretty close to the subject, kind of like almost 135. I'm just looking at it in relationship to the subject and the camera. So 0, 180, 90, 90. Yeah, it's like halfway between 90 and 180, 135 here-ish. 135 left. Okay, fair enough. That's a spotlight. That is a Maya light. So create lights, Maya lights. There's our spotlight. And let's just kind of rough position it in. So off to the side here. Let's go to the back. Okay. Let's rotate it. Well, let's push it back here a little bit more. And let's rotate it a little bit more. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, oh, okay. So the scale is not bigger. What am I seeing here that I need to fix? So remember, the icon for this, scaling it means absolutely nothing. Look at it from the front. All right, let's look at mine from the front here. Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah. So what am I seeing? Well, for one thing, looks like my light needs to come up because I see the center of it needs to be a little bit higher. So let's do that. All right. What else do you notice? What is this called? So in a spotlight, what are the spotlight controls? Okay, well, one, you got cone angle. Two, you got penumbra angle. That's the softness. And then you got drop off, kind of like fall off or decay towards the edges. You know, stays bright in the middle, drops off. So which one of these do I need to fix to get this to look like this? Anybody? Nathaniel, Marie, Cantavius, Joni, Darian, Daniel, Clifton, Chanel, Brianna. Anybody want to take a guess? What are we doing? Cone angle. That's what I need to change. Thank you, Darian. So I'm just going to kind of rough it in by eyeball. That's all I wanted to know was, how do I make this look like that? So let's go in. Let's scale this up. Oh, look at that. This is magical. This is bloody magical. All right, so make it a little bigger, just going by eyeball here. Let's see what that does. So kind of roughed in. Let's take one more look at it overhead. It probably needs to be fixed a little bit more. Kind of looking at the position. Okay, it's kind of grabbing the ear. Here. Yeah, good enough for now. Let's see what's going on here. So now let's load in our new reference. There's our rim light. And let's hit the render button. Aha. So a couple of things that we see right away. I can see a light pattern on the ground that I don't have here. And I can see my light is hilariously weak. So let's crank up the light and figure out what's going on. Then we can worry about position, because I need to be able to see the light to see where it falls to kind of get the position also. All right, so when you don't know how bright, I'll usually maybe double it. Now let's try that. No. Yeah, it definitely needs more power. Okay, so there's a couple things going on here. Yeah, it looks like my light's not too bad, but I got a lot of bounce light in here. I got a lot of light bouncing off on the back of the ear that I don't have here. Let's address one thing at a time. First, the elephant in the room is what? What's the biggest difference you can see? Anybody? Would I want to turn off cast shadows on the floor? Well, that's not a shadow on the floor. First, I want to get rid of this. This is a light shape. Shadows won't be an issue if there's no light. So what we want to use here is light linking. Notice we've got light on the ground plane or our backdrop. We don't have it in our reference. So that tells me right away, okay, light linking is involved here. So this is a need for light linking. We've got unwanted light, and consequently, we've also got a shadow. Now, shadow's not an issue when you can't see light. So we want to unlink this rim light from which surface? I think, Darian, you said it. Sort of, indirectly. Yeah, on the floor. Exactly. The ground plane, the floor. So light linking is found under Windows, relationship editors, light linking, light centric. So there's my spotlight on the left side, and light centric simply means that you've got lights on the left, objects on the right, geometry, whatever you want to call it. Objects on the right. If I click on a light, it will tell me what it's linked up to on the right. That's the beauty of this. So before I do that, though, I want to expand my group so I can see my sub-objects in the group. So I click on the key light, notice the render bunny backdrop linked. Fill light, render bunny backdrop linked. Spotlight, render bunny backdrop linked. It's the spotlight, that's my rim light, that I want to unlink. So let's hit the render button. I click on spotlight, and I want to unlink it from the backdrop. All I do is click on it to unhighlight the backdrop. There we go. I want to link it back up again. I click on it. There we go. So I can turn that off and on. So if I accidentally unlink something wrong, well, I can link it back up again by going back into the relationship editor. Make sure you select the correct light on the left, and then make sure it is linked up to the proper geometry or unlinked on the right. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions about the relationship editor, light linking in particular? It's really a simple process. Nathaniel, Maria, Contavious, Joni, Brianna's good. Thank you, Brianna. Darian, Clifton's good. Thank you. Daniel, Contavious got it. Thank you. Chanel, questions? All right, so one thing you want to avoid down at the bottom, you'll notice there are surfaces. Don't unlink lights from surface materials. That will cause you a world of headache. Because in our scene here, everything has the standard surface assigned to it, AI standard surface. All right, so if you unlink that, you're unlinking it from that, every object from that light. So light linking, think light object, not material. Public service announcement, word of warning. All right, so with that done, all I have to do is close this out. And like I said, if I go, oh crap, I didn't want to do that. You go back. All right, notice I clicked on the light and opened this up and it doesn't show me anything linked. I'm just going to do it again. Let me check another light. Let me deselect all my lights, do that, click on that. There we go. So I can turn it back on. All right, now I got a couple other issues going on here. One is I got a lot of bounce light. The ear, right? I don't have that going on. It's bouncing off the rabbit onto the ground plane. So it's not direct light, it's indirect light. Okay, so that is actually coming from, let's go under Arnold here. And that's coming right from here for our light. So indirect, if I turn that off, now if I turn off diffuse, guess what? My surface was diffuse. But it's this indirect bounce light. This is my global illumination. Like lighting designers would kill to be able to go, oh, you know what? I don't want any indirect light bouncing around from that light. So immediately that got rid of most of my issues. So I can see maybe my light needs to be a little brighter. I mean, it's not bad, but I got some other issues going on. So again, after we did light linking, I noticed there's a lot of indirect bounce light bouncing around on my subject that I don't have in the reference. So in my spotlight, I went down under visibility and I turned off indirect. So anybody watching this video, if you see anybody having issues and they forgot to do this, it's here in the video. So let's save this so far. Now there's a couple other things. Actually, there's one other thing that's going on. So we got rid of the light. We got rid of the bounce light, but we're missing all of these nice little highlights here. We got one more thing to do. Anybody got an idea what that one thing we would need to try or do or think about? Rotate the light a bit, back legs a little dark. Okay, if I rotate the light, well, let's try it. Let's render. And let's rotate that light. So let's rotate the light. Oops, that didn't do it. That didn't do it. Actually, Darian, you were sort of, would we need to do some more light linking in order to get the lighting on the legs? That's a good question, Brianna. But here's the problem. That rabbit is one object, so there's no way to light link different parts of the same mesh. It'd be like us trying to, oh, I got my mug and I want the handle to be lit differently than the body. Well, the only way in the real world is to, block the light somehow or break the handle off, light it, put it back in Photoshop. And believe it or not, Darian, you actually mentioned this a little bit earlier, whether you were aware of it or not. Whenever you have an object that is being lit, so we go outside in the sun. Okay, go out in the sun, nice bright day, put your hand up over your face to block the sun so you can look up. Well, your hand is creating a shadow off of, it's creating a shadow on your face from your hand blocking light. So we are in effect self-shadowing. Now, Darian said, disable self-shadows. Well, actually, it's not self-shadows, it's disable shadows completely. So let me hit render again, turn off cast shadows. And now our object has shadows on the back leg. Now, I would say 97 to 98% of the time, you always want to have shadows on. But in this case, where you're trying to get the most out of a rim light, you want to add it's like having an extra kick light on the front legs. So again, shadows on, everything gets blocked. Shadows off, now we're getting that little bit of extra light. And it looks like I need some more intensity. So let's bump that up. So, looks like I got the light sort of in the right position again. Just cranking up the intensity a little bit. All right, so, it's not really trickery. We're just using all the tools that we can artistically to make something look good. So for the rabbit, getting the light position. For the rim, then we realize, oh, we got to turn off the light being linked, that rim light being linked to the backdrop because it created that light pattern. Okay, then we realized, oh, we're getting a lot of bounce light off of the rabbit onto the ground. So in the light, we had to go down, turn off the indirect under visibility to 0. And then we realized we weren't getting the rim light in the back of the rabbit. The back leg, the back front leg of the rabbit, it was self-shadowing. So let me go back again, just real quick and kind of go through the steps. Let me kick that off. Let's turn that on. Let's go back to light linking. All right, so let me expand that. Let's do that. Let's do that. So there's where we were to begin with, right? Got to get rid of that light on the backdrop. So we unlink it, light linking, spotlight, that's our rim light. I forgot to rename it, but I will. Turn off backdrop. perfect. That part's good. Got a lot of bounce light. That's under my rim light also. Visibility, turn off indirect. And then I go, oh, I'm missing that back leg. Well, you know what? The light, the rabbit's, the body's shadowing the back leg. Let's turn off shadows. And there we go. So now at this point, I would suggest, 80, 85% of the way, you go through, go back to the key light, take another pass at the key light. Right. So what I'm going to do is let's rename this rim. Let's save the scene. Let's throw that rim on a display layer. There we go. So what I would do is just go back, turn the key light on again, render it out. Tweak it, get done with that, take another pass at the fill light, compare it with the reference, tweak it, go back, take another look at the rim light, tweak it. Then after a couple of times, you're going, I've incrementally gotten it better. I want to see what it looks like. Turn all your lights back on. Load in your final reference. Now I should go through, 2 or 3 more passes. I'm doing this for brevity, so this is not done. But the workflow is what I'm really interested in showing you. So here's my final rabbit. Okay, now all my lights are on. Let's do a quick render. Let's see how we did. All right, so the rim light's not bad. The fill light's not bad. The key light, yeah, that's still off a little. But it's not off as much as I thought. My shadows are a little big. Maybe I scaled the light in slightly. But I'm looking at the shadows under the tail. I mean, that's not bad. It's close. Much closer than if I obsess about each light by itself. All right, does this workflow make sense to you guys? You're doing, if you want to do the still life, it's the same process. Get it 80, 85%. Move on to the next light, 80, 85%. Move on to the next light, 80, 85%. Just go back a couple of times, then put all your lights on, load in the final reference, see where you are. Take notes. Go, okay, I'm seeing some stuff I need to fix here. We can do that. And then you start and you go again. All right. Questions about the workflow from anybody? Hopefully everybody's, good. But if not, this is a good time to ask questions. So Brianna, Chanel, Clifton, Daniel, Darian, Joni, Kentavious, Marie, Nathaniel, anybody got any questions? Take your time, be patient. If this is your first time doing it, it's going to take a little bit of time. And all the tools are new, the techniques are new. The more you do it, the better you will get. Okay. Good, good, good. So let's save this. Oh, let me get rid of this. There we go. Okay. Let's put that away. And let's take a crack at doing the portrait. All right, so first thing, let's pick one out. Just realize this is probably the hardest. So if you remember correctly, the ones that we can do are the ones that are left visible. So somebody pick one, doesn't matter which one. We're not going to be able to get through the entire thing, completely finished, but we can at least start the process. And it's going to be the same process as the rabbit and the still life, right? I'm going to put my key light in, try and get that based on what I see in the reference. And then I'll add any additional light. All right, Brianna wants to give the last one, the colored lights, a try. Good. Do it. Okay. Anybody got any requests? If not, we'll give that one a try. We might not be able to get through it, but at least we can get the start so you guys can see the workflow. Now, you're not going to get breakdowns, so you're still going to work on one light at a time, but you're going to have the other lights on as you start to add more and more. All right, so let's take a crack at the color. Let me clear this. Let's open this up in Photoshop. Just double clicked on it. I'm going to right click, open in Photoshop. There we go. All right, so I'm going to come down here. I'm going to use the crop tool, which is this tool right here. Width and resolution. There we go. That's what I want to have set up here. I don't want to put any sizes in here. So Command plus and minus on the Mac will zoom in and out. And right now you can see I'm at 50%. There's 100%. Now, when you're in Photoshop and you're working, right, you can pan around by holding space bar and move your object around. So let's just kind of crop this. And that's pretty good. That's pretty good. There we go. So when you're all done, you hit the checkbox up here or hit the enter button. I'm going to save as Targa. All right, so this is going to be, what should we call this? Colored gels? Sure, why not? Let's change the format. I don't want a JPEG. Colored gels. Let's hit save. 24-bit, absolutely. Quit out of Photoshop because my in Photoshop running, me recording and streaming a video at the same time is a recipe for disaster. All right, so there's my reference. All right, so I'm just going to take a look at it real quick, kind of do a little pre-pro in my mind. All right, so this is my key light, that's my fill, that's the backlight, that's the rim light, and that supports the key and also keeps that fill light from creeping over to the left side of the face. So I'm looking, my point or my spotlight is up high above the subject a little bit. I kind of got a shadow coming down a little bit here. Also, the chin will help me right there. So it's kind of about that height. All right, let's see what we can do with this. No, go away. Stop doing things. Good, there we are. Let's do that. Let's do this. Good. Well, let's just open it. So I have it open. And there's my portrait. So let's get Maya. Set project. Remember, always set project. File, set project to the portrait. Project folder. Yep, that's it. Let's go back, click on it, hit set, open. All right, so you get an error, ignore the error. I know it's annoying, but it should be fine. Just like with all the others, I don't like to work in the render cam. I prefer to work in perspective. Kind of like to do this and this, just like I did with the rabbit, so I can get an idea. All right, so if you hit 5 or 6 in the keyboard, don't expect to be able to see a whole lot. You'll see a little bit here. That's the head. It's got the skin on it. You're not going to be able to see any subsurface scattering until you render. All right, so there's the head. That kind of helps a little bit, being able to see it. Honestly, doesn't really matter. If you forget to set your project folder, this is what your render will look like. It will be terrible. And it's, of course, it's very dense because this was, again, a point cloud scan. So you hit 6, you should be able to see textures. If you don't see textures when you hit the 6 key, go back, set your project again. Right, viewing textures is not necessary. Like I said, sometimes it is distracting. So let's just get our kind of waxy picture here, or waxy statue. All right, let's start with the key light. So key light kind of looks like it's about 30 degrees. It's not quite 45. And we're going to start with a spotlight. Create lights, spotlight. Let's take that light. Let's move it over here. Let's go back here. How close is it to the camera? It's pretty close to the camera, isn't it? All right, I'm going to try that. Let's rotate it a little toward the subject. So looks like it's going right on the side of the head there. And maybe rotate just a smidge more. There we go. All right, now, as far as elevation goes, that is hilarious. So I can tell, remember that highlight in the eye, can tell it's elevated a little bit. Now, remember, this is a Maya light, so we'll be able to use the interactive manipulator. So with the light selected, when you hit Shift T, whoops, sorry, my bad. You hit Command T. All right, come on. It's the T key. So I got T's on my brain. All right, so sorry. Shift T brings up assign new material. You want just the T key. That gives you the interactive manipulator with the center of interest. So let's move that center of interest here, which is really where I think I want it. It sort of looks like that. We've got it elevated a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, let's give that a try. So let's bring up Arnold. Now, right away, Arnold's going to recognize, Look at you. Now, notice I still have this little kind of preview area. I can minimize that by clicking that little arrow next to the snapshot. So I'm not going to be loading the reference in here because it's not really going to help me. I'd rather have it over here. All right, so let's take a render, see what we get. Now, it may take a second or two. What it's trying to do is build the file for the skin texture so that it displays it properly. All right, so now I'm looking at perspective. I don't want perspective. I want the render cam. Let's look at that, see if that looks any different. Well, this is telling me my light is not bright enough. All right, so let's try that. There we go. So definitely not bright enough. Now notice when you start increasing the intensity, the skin starts to become alive. And that's one of the things with subsurface scattering. Subsurface scattering, you will have the skin absorb some of the light and gradually, spread it out. All right, so shadow, sort of okay. Let's see. Definitely needs to be a little brighter. Now, one of the things that's going to be interesting is when I add in, hopefully we get to this part, I add in that kind of reflector fill light. It's going to also make everything brighter. So I don't want to go too bright here. So I can see where everything is. So that's not bad. I'm going to ignore the fact that that light is hitting the backdrop. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I can see right here that this backlight is responsible for the blue. So what can I do to make my key light not affect the backdrop? Something we just did with the rabbit. Let's do some light linking. So if I unlink this light, I won't get any unnecessary brightness on that backdrop. Because I can foresee this light plus some of the red light on there, and I put blue in, it's going to all kind of mix together. So, hey, I'm in CG. Why not use light linking to my advantage? So let's go rendering. All right, let's go relationship editor, light linking, light centric. There's my key light. Let's unlink it from the backdrop. There we go. Beautiful. So let's put our fill light in. Now, this is just a first pass, just so I can figure out what's going on. All right, so fill light, that's going to be this reddish light. And it's going to be a area light. Why? Because that's a softbox. That's an area light. And where's this coming from? So that looks like it from a little bit from the back. So let's rotate this light around a little bit. Pull that up off the ground. There we go. I can see it a little bit better. And I'm thinking that's probably going to be sort of level with the head. Let's try that. Looks like it needs to come back here just a touch. Let's give it a little rotate right there. Well, actually, that's probably a little too much. Pull this around front a little bit more. Might be a little close. Let's pull it back a little. So one thing I can see, red. All right, yeah, we got red. So let's throw some red in there. That's red. And let's render. So now I'm not seeing any result from that light because I know for a fact that's going to be really weak. So there we go. There's my red light. Let's crank it up a little. Now I can see the red light is really hitting that backdrop. So let's unlink the fill light. I like to put the color in there too. So if I'm looking at this in the outliner, I can go, oh, key light, fill light, red, good. So let's unlink that from the backdrop. Windows, relationship editors, light linking, light centric, fill light, background, gone. Okay, this looks way too saturated. All right, so a couple things going on here. One, it's not bad. Looks like it could come around a little bit more. Let's desaturate the color. Let's go like, oh, let's go 50%, see how that looks. And lost a little bit. Let's crank it up a little more. What I'm trying to do is get that red tone that I got there. And you know what? I might be able to crank this up a little bit more. So my shadow, that looks about right here, but it's kind of getting washed out from my fill light. So let's see, you know what? That light looks bigger. So let's scale this up a little. All right, not bad. And I'm just working in, really preview quality. All right, so we're going to kind of rough these lights in. Looks like it could still be a little brighter. I'm looking at how bright it is on the side of the face there. How's that? That's not bad. Now, one thing I do notice is that light, that's my key light here. Okay, looks like it's got a honeycomb on it, which means I need to add a little bit of softness or radius to my spotlight. So let's try 1. How's that look? Oh, that is much better. That really softened that shadow up a little. Try 0.5. No. Let's go with 1 for now. Kind of softened that nose shadow up quite a bit. Softened up that hard shadow under the neck. And actually, that does look a little hard. Let's go 0.7. All right, so that did help it a little bit. Yeah, there we go. It's like, yeah, 0.5 might even work. Just trying to get it a little hard here, but not to the point where it's really noticeable on the neck. All right, so like I said, I'm going to rough these in. So let's go with the blue backlight there, and I'm going to want to link that light up to the background only. That is a spotlight. So that's easy enough to do. Looks like it's right about center of the chin where it's really bright. So create lights, spotlight. Whoops, that's a point light. Don't want that. Create lights, spot. Wow. Okay. Third time's a charm. Spot. There we go. Get it together, Tony. All right. So let's bring it up. Let's put it like right behind our subject. Right about there, maybe chin level or so. Yeah, that's about right. That's blue. Let's be optimistic. Let's make it blue. Sure, let's see what we get. So it's going to be weak. And it's going to be small. You can definitely see it's like, whoa. All right, let's kind of point this over here, put it right back of the head. Let's go a little lower with it. I'm trying to make the bright spot here. Now let's open it up, which is right, the cone angle. And let's add some penumbra. So we get that kind of vignette effect back here. So we'll try that. And let's add some drop off. Just let's go 1. There we go. Now it looks a little saturated, so let's desaturate it a bit. And maybe it's a little too purple, so let's push it down the other end just a little bit more. All right, so we got our key light, our fill light. We got the workings of our backlight in there. And okay, well, let's give it a try. We got a couple of minutes. We're going to run over a little bit, but I just want to kind of rough in the rim and the that last reflector. All right, so let me save as. (2021-04). It's the color gel one. So rim light time. So again, another spotlight. There we go. Let's bring it around back. Let's pull it up. It's got to be a little bit above. Let's hit the T key. And now we can aim it doing this. All right, so that's kind of pinky looking, looks magenta. Let's just throw some magenta in there, which is right here. And let's crank up the intensity because it's probably going to be too low. There's our rim. We're getting it on the side of the head here. Looks like our cone needs to be expanded a little. Or I raise it up. Actually, raising it up does a much better job. All right, so let's give it a little more intensity there. Good head. A little bit of pink there. Yeah, it might be a little too much. Let's try this. All right, so last thing I'm going to rough in, and this is all rough, believe me, is the reflector. So for that, I'm going to use an area light, an Arnold area light, but make it a disc. Why not? So let's create an Arnold area light. Let's pull it up. It's probably going to be about head height. Let's rotate it around. Where are you? Okay, rotate it around a little bit like that. Let's go back here. Change it from a quad to a disc. Looks bigger, so let's scale it. Why not? Just want to make sure it doesn't interfere with my other light. So let's rotate this a little bit more, bring it forward just ever so slightly. And let's see what we get. Well, let me see if it's working. So I'm going to be ridiculous and give it like, yep, it's working. Don't use 1,000. All right, so that kind of washed out. And it's also leaking onto the backdrop. So I have to unlink this light from the backdrop. So Windows, Relationship Editor, Light Linking, Area Light, that's going to be my, I better rename these lights. That's going to be my there we go. My reflector. All right, so let's rename these. Okay, area light. All right, so key. This is my backlight. Rim. And this is my reflector. It's a disc light. Now, everybody's named, everybody's numbered. Well, not numbered, but you get the idea. All right, so looks like I could come down a bit on the intensity here. All right, so let's bring it around the front a little more. Actually, I just pulled it forward. All right, so we got a nice subtle effect going on there. All right, so I have it on 20. Let's see. Is it doing? Yeah, it's doing something. That's good. Good to know. Turn it back. Looks like I could use a little more key light. I need a little more hot on that face. All right, but you get the idea. All right, does that make sense? So I'm going to go, I would go back several times and do this because this is going to take a while to get. Now, I may not be happy with the position of it. So what I may wind up doing is turning all the other lights off, work on getting my shadow, my main shadow, although this shadow doesn't look bad here. I think that's correct. It might be my reflector that's giving me issues. One other thing, when you guys go to render this skin has subsurface scattering on it. So that means that if you render it and you see noise that you can't get rid of, even when you denoise it, you might have to go into the render settings under Arnold and increase the subsurface scattering from 2 to 4. If you're doing the ear, the one where there's the rim light, like I did for this one, right? You're getting that subsurface scattering coming through the ear, and you see noise in the ear, that's where you're going to need to turn up subsurface scattering here. Now, for this, not really sure I would need it. You know, obviously I would crank it up to my production settings, probably start at 4 and 8. See how it looks. If I still see some noise in there, I might crank up my subsurface to 4. It's going to increase render time, but it will get rid of the noise in the subsurface scattering on the skin. Okay, lots of stuff flew by today. Any questions before we break for lunch? So Brianna, Chanel, Clifton, Daniel, Darian, Joni, Kentavious, Marie, Nathaniel. No questions. Everybody seems good. All right, awesome. Thanks for hanging in there with me, guys. I'll pop back in at the start of lab, make sure everybody's okay. So let's see. Let's go. Ari, I think we're going to start lab at 2:15. So
that sounds good.
So we'll go to lunch, come back to lab at 2:15. Ari will be here. I'll be here at the start of lab. Just to make sure everybody's good. Ari I leave you in her capable hands. If I don't see you guys, have a great spring break. Just remember, that we are on vacation next week, actually starting at the end of today, business today. So come back to lab at 2:15. And like I said, if I don't see you, have a great spring break. Be safe. If you have a chance to get vaccinated, go ahead, go do it. I encourage everybody. All right, so let's stop recording.